Hey.
Oh, Chelsea, I'm feeling really relaxed after that music.
Right?
Got
Don't you just want to
I got into a Zen place.
float away
A
into the
little bit.
wilderness?
I
Never
do.
come down from your tree house? Give up shaving?
I mean, I've already done that.
Yeah.
Sorry
Me too.
about
We'll
that.
talk about that later. We'll wait to finish
You
that
gave up
conversation.
shaving?
It's
Okay.
fine. It's totally fine. It's 2021. We get to do what we want to do. Okay.
That's right. All the time. Okay.
Excuse me. Hey, all right. So welcome to We Are Unqualified. It's very subtly displayed upon the bottom of our thingy bobber here.
Screenly. It's there.
It's I don't know. Okay, so this is the fifth episode in the series of why we are unqualified, why that makes us cool, and then what qualifications even mean. And so we're just kind of tearing down stigmas and changing the world one conversation at a time. So yes, Jon sounds super excited. What's up, Jen?
Hi, Jen. You can feel free to interrupt us. Yes, unqualified. I mean, it's an interesting idea. What does it mean to be qualified to do anything, and who gets to decide who's qualified? Who makes that decision, Chelsea? Who even makes the decision that I'm qualified to talk to you right now on a show about being unqualified?
All right, I have that answer. Because it's my show, my stream, my decision. I do.
Oh, okay. So what qualifications do I have to be on the show about being unqualified?
Your willingness to engage in the conversation, one.
My willingness to be on camera.
I mean, you said yes. That was pretty much, that was it.
Ouch. Oh, we're not going to blow smoke up my ass. No way. Oh, I just cursed.
That doesn't sound like me at all. What's wrong with the dogs? Why are the dogs? What's happening?
The dogs are upset about the qualifications.
Alea, could you participate in the shenanigans with the furry situations? Thanks. That's not going to help me.
We're live.
We are live from the Robertson house.
Where there are dogs and children surrounding us at all moments. They seem more qualified for this show than the two of us.
That's probably accurate. I would probably say that's right. Okay, so what do you do?
What do I do? Well, in my day job that pays me the money, I work as the VP of Research and Analytics at the New York City Tourism Board, where I study tourist patterns of who comes here, what they do when they're here, and why they come. So I'm a tourism researcher.
How did I not know this?
Oh, this is the first time you're learning about this. This is what I do for money. And the reason you never learned about this is because my entire LinkedIn persona is based on career coaching and helping young people find their dream careers based on who they are, which has absolutely zero to do with being a VP of research for New York City and company. So you can imagine the unqualified imposter syndrome on both ends. How does one do two jobs that have nothing to do with each other?
I mean, I think the answer is one remains unqualified for both and just wings it.
Yeah, I do feel that way. Correct. It's a lot of winging. No, I'm still working as a researcher in tourism, and I do hope my boss is not watching this, because I will make a lot of confessions about feeling like, what am I really good enough to do this? Am I qualified? No, probably not.
I mean, but so if you I no longer work for someone else, right? They closed down my whole school. They gave away my job. It's fine. I am fine. It's totally fine. Okay. But in part of your work, you do still work for someone else. So does qualifications in this sense include that, one, you got the job, and two, you have not yet been fired?
Yeah, I mean, really, that's that could end the entire conversation, right? Qualified means that you can do the job and that you haven't been fired. But I will like to add this: that at other jobs I've had in the past, where I felt extremely qualified and extremely good at what I did, I got fired from those jobs. So being qualified and being the expert doesn't necessarily mean you are safe at your job, particularly because this is a fun place to lead this conversation. Politics matter way more than qualifications, particularly at large companies. So if you know whose butt to kiss in the right way, you're actually more qualified to do your job than somebody who's actually competent at doing the actual job. Welcome to the way the world works.
Party. So what you're saying is that your qualifications are very heavily dependent upon the person who is perceiving them.
Yeah, I mean, it's heavily dependent on that, and it's dependent on your reputation management. And I apologize, my cat, like, we're just having a lot of fun.
I thought that was a child.
That's actually a cat who's about to throw up her food. So we're just going to let this happen, and I'm going to answer the question. I think that qualifications, the reason that I'm so... We're just going to let this happen, aren't we? She stopped. No, she swallowed her
oh, no.
Yeah, I'm sorry that wasn't on screen for everybody to see. Here's what I'm qualified for. Continuing a conversation while a cat... Oh, is she going to go vomit somewhere else?
Oh, boy. You'll have to go find it
Welcome
later.
to live. I think so. So this is something that we all of us honest, authentic folk need to learn, is that the more you brag about how much you know, the more others believe that you're qualified, whether you are actually qualified to do something or not.
So, I mean, that's why I never talk about what I know. I just talk about all the things that I'm unqualified and don't know how to do, because eventually people are going to take you seriously and be like, oh, yeah, Chelsea can do these 25 things. And I'll be like, did I say
that? No.
Just saying.
Yeah, so I think, so qualified, if we're going to be philosophical here, I think it comes down to the eye of the beholder. And the more that you can make yourself seem like you know what you're doing and you're talking about, that's the reality. Whether you can do it or not, who knows if people can tell you. I think maybe the one area where this may not be true is skill jobs like engineering and coding.
I mean, anything that requires a scalpel that's going to touch my skin. Like,
I believe that being a surgeon would require somebody who's qualified. It's questionable whether it's true for lawyers. We don't know the answer to that. Probably not. If you want to I think that a lot of this was around career coaching, and I think that's actually a really interesting area to bring this conversation. How do you know someone is qualified? And that's the other thing that I pretend that I know how to do, and you probably don't. But how do you... the question, how do you know that a coach is qualified to help you do what you want to do? Yeah. Is there ever a way to know that?
We've kind of brainstormed what we think on these past couple episodes, but I'd love to hear like your take on that.
I really don't have a take. The one take I will have that will probably get me in trouble. That's a good thing.
Don't you live like in the space of some sort of trouble?
Being in trouble? Yeah, my LinkedIn post this week have purposefully been getting myself in trouble. It's been fun.
So go for it.
All right, I'll get myself in trouble. I don't know what the point of these qualifications are from a coaching degree standpoint. Like, do you need all of these numbers or letters after your name that says I'm qualified to be a coach because I did this as a coach?
I mean, my opinion, no. However, I do think it was a discussion in one of these previous episodes that I think I should put like Chelsea Robertson, comma, IMO, and people would be like, oh, cool, Chelsea has like
some numbers.
Whatever that means, when really it just means in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, you can call yourself an IMO.
Go with it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm an IMO, and people will be like, oh, yeah, I know what that is. That's totally cool. I mean, I
No.
think our discussions have really been around you as the consumer get to choose your measuring stick for qualifications, and you have to, for lack of a better way to say it, like qualify the person that you're working with based on whatever data you find as the consumer.
Look, I've been coaching, I want to say, I don't know, 5 years at this point, right? But, you know, there was a lot of faking it till I made it to get to a place where I'm like, oh, I actually believe that I'm helping people because maybe they've told me. Or actually, you know what? The better way to judge that I'm qualified, you're going to love this measuring stick.
Excellent.
They come for one session and then they come to the next.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Right next to, yeah, like I'm not getting fired. They come to the second session. I like it.
No, but literally that, I mean, and I'm saying it with all seriousness. If they come back after one session and they don't say, well, that was a waste of my time.
Yeah.
And they're like, because a lot of times at the beginning of my coaching career, they'd come for one session. They'd be like, I'm done with this. And I, of course, took it really personally because I did feel super unqualified. And I've literally not had a client cancel after the first session, so I can say, okay, cool, that's a good measuring stick. I'm helping there, but I have no desire to go get any of those qualifications, which a lot of people with qualifications are probably like, you're just full of yourself. That's why you don't do it.
Totally Sherry says if you call yourself an authentic influencer, then you're qualified.
Sherry, are you trolling me on a Friday, Sherry? Is that what's happening right now?
I mean, but that's really the conversation that we've had is in all of these episodes, because I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone that I've talked to so far has any letters after their name. I honestly, like, the coach that I worked with, who I adore and love and would work with her for the next 200 years because she's a beautiful human. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that she had all kinds of letters after her name and was like technically qualified. She was formerly a psychologist or psychiatrist. I don't know which one. Like, she has things. I didn't know that. And it didn't even dawn on me to look until we were having this conversation, because that wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for someone who created space for me, engaged in a conversation, was an active listener, et cetera, et cetera. And I think you can find that. My qualifications exist inside or outside of a degree. Like, that wasn't a deciding factor, or little letters or whatever, right? I was the consumer. I got to make the decisions, which I think is always an interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Sherry was making a point, like a funny point, but I think it's true. I think if somebody wants to work with me, the good thing about having a really strong brand is that people know what I'm all about and they know what my message is. So they know what they're getting into when they want to work with me, right?
Do they know fully what they're getting into, though? Fully?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah. I warned them. I'm like, this is going to be the most intense, traumatizing hour of your life. And they're like, bring it! Because most of them have gone, like, you know, there's like a lot of, Ryan, results. I hate that word. Sorry, we'll talk about it in a second. Congratulations, you're getting me. That was a good trigger word.
We'll get to that party. In a second. Welcome to the party, Ryan.
We'll get to that word in a second because that drives me crazy. That's actually a really good conversation for us to have, Chelsea. But
I like it.
I think for coaches, and this is completely maybe a little bit off topic, but I think that if you establish a brand of who you are and what you're all about, and you represent that online, you know, people will gravitate that or they'll hate it, right? Yeah. Most of my clients that have worked with me have had some form of therapy. Right. So they already know what the therapeutic process is, and they want to come because my process is very similar to therapy, except for careers, right? So, you know, I could call myself career therapist, but career whisperer sounds better. So they've already qualified themselves, but like most people have disqualified themselves from wanting to work with me because they're just like, I want a resume fixed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm here to transform your life in a very authentic way.
Like, I don't have time for that.
I don't have time to look inside my soul. So I'm just like, can you get me a resume? I'm like,
my soul's fine. My soul's
fine. I just need a job. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to be your best coach. They disqualified themselves. That's the nice thing. So
yeah. I mean, I think it serves as a great filter to show up authentically. And I have the same concept, right? If you follow me at all, you know that I'm more more likely to go about it in a pessimistic way. Like some of this, I'm unqualified, my hashtag is what could go wrong. Like it's always about how can we push this all the way to the end and probably even jump off the cliff and then figure out what happens on the way down, right? That's going to filter a fair amount of people out who are like, I have no interest in that shenanigan. And I think that's kind of your brand. Right. Is to show up who you are, and then that filters out the people who do not want to do that.
Yeah, and it means that like my audience for my services is very, very limited because most people don't want to do that kind of like spiritual awakening work when they're trying to figure out a career. So like I'll almost always find out invariably they've had some sort of therapeutic intervention, either by a coach or life coach or a therapist. And I'm like, oh, of course you did, because that's exactly what we're doing here.
Yeah. And I think, not to like go down this road, but I would comment that for me, an IMO, that it could be very relevant that you really dig a little bit deeper into what you have going on inside your soul and your framework and your perspective on things because your job is a very important piece, a giant piece of your life. And I think you're going to find a more aligned job when you find a more aligned self. And you do these things, like they play into each other.
Yeah. I mean, to you and me and to Jennifer Brick, who's
here. She's here. See,
people need to do the spiritual awakening soul work when they want to figure out what's the right career for them. If they don't do it, they're going to, it's like, they're going to be stuck in traffic for 15 years when they could have just, gone on the easy lane on the highway. But we're getting off topic with Unqualified. I think that like, people qualify themselves for me. And it's an interesting question, right? Because when I set up a 15-minute consult with clients right before we meet as coaching, hi dog. Your dog is not cool to be a client of mine, just FYI. And the reason I do it is they have to understand that their soul's fun. I'm laughing because I believe that to be true. No, so I'm qualifying my clients as much as they're qualifying me, right?
Oh, for sure.
Meaning like, do you really want soul deep awakening things where I'm going to ask you uncomfortable questions so that you come to some sort of conclusions about yourself? Or do you want to just look at someone to look at your resume? Can we go back to the results thing? Because I want to talk about that. I promise nothing to my clients except to say I'm going to help you get clarity on the next step of your career. That's really broad. I don't like result-oriented, necessarily like metrics-driven thing to decide whether you're qualified or not. Because, let's say like, okay, you have a client, you're like, I got them a job at Amazon, but did you really though? Like they could have just been coming to you because they're like, I need, like, here's their inner need, right, Chelsea? They're like, I need some self-esteem support, right? Which is like really the underlying need, but then they end up getting the job at Amazon. And it's like, well, you didn't really help them do that. You just brought them to a good place. Hello, are we paused here? Hello? Are you still there, Chelsea? Am I still here? Can anyone hear me? You guys can hear me? Is this happening? Or do I need to like leave and come back? Oh, Chelsea's frozen. It's not me. Maybe I should leave and come back. Or I can just talk to the audience until Chelsea comes back. Who wants to hang out? Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. I guess I'm just going to talk to everybody here. Hi, it's my show. Who wants to ask me questions? It's a really long pause, Kevin. It really is. What are we going to do about that? I'm just so excited to hear myself talk. Oh my goodness, lives are funny. Did I get a message from Chelsea telling me what's happening? I did not. Okay, so it's the Jon Show. I still have to see what anybody have. Who's got questions? Hi. Not awkward at all. No, not at all. We just keep going. It's been like this for 3 minutes now. I'm just gonna talk. Who here has any recommendations for what I should do? I should leave and come back. Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Hi.
Let's just pick up exactly where we were.
I don't know.
Okay, so we're going to pretend that didn't happen.
Okay.
And we're going to start just pretending like that didn't happen, and we're going to just say we were talking about getting results, and I was saying I don't like metrics driven results orientation.
Okay. Perfect.
You were eating? How did you find time to eat?
I was not eating. I have a cut on the inside of my face. I was eating. You know, I just ran down the store. You just
rebooted the computer so you could go eat.
I was hungry. Okay, wait. I have an opinion. All right. I am O.
I'm just going to say it every single time.
Here's my theory. This is the same conversation that we have around the issue with grades in education, where everything's an assessment-based, grade-based system, is that you lose the opportunity for so much individualization because you're bringing everybody to one predetermined end. Okay, so I feel like the quality that you will find in coaching, especially coaching that is not results oriented or saying I will get you to this point, is that you get to the point where you need to be, where you personally need to go. It's highly individualized instead of getting to the point where I feel like you should be. And I think that's the difference between results oriented coaching and like intuitive or individualized coaching.
Well, here's also the problem. Thank you. I 100% agree, which is really boring. But here's the problem with results-oriented coaching, right? And are we still in the unqualified area? I think so. If you guys feel like we're off,
it's fine. Just keep going. It's my show. I got it. I'm
Thanks,
qualifying.
Chelsea.
This is a qualified, unqualified conversation.
I think that you tend towards bad coaching if you're focused on results. I don't know if you agree with this, because
I actually, unfortunately, completely agree. How boring.
the coaching relationship and experience is a dance, right? Where
Yeah.
you are, and you're hoping to lead that dance as the coach, but a lot of the work has to be done by the individual. So they have to seek the results that they want for themselves and figure out what those are, without you necessarily saying, this is what I believe for you. Because when you get to that, then it comes down to this sort of controversial thing in the coaching area, which is, do you give advice? And when you get to results-oriented coaching, it becomes all about giving advice, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's just making fun of us now and not engaging in conversation about anything that we're talking about.
You know why? It's
so we try to move on and be really serious.
To like participate in the conversation. That's the real problem. And now they have like all kinds of things happening.
It's a lot of jokes
over here.
Yeah, it's a lot of jokes. They're just having fun without us even being here. It's like, why are we even here? They're just talking. They could be talking on WhatsApp, but they're talking on our chat, making us feel unqualified. It's like we're not being validated for the stuff that we're saying a little bit. Chelsea,
you know what?
right
it's a really good thing that we don't seek external validation, isn't it, Jon?
Like literally, we don't. That's what makes us very special.
Doesn't it? Isn't it why we're so special?
It is why we're special. Now, that's actually a really interesting point, Chelsea. You want to go down that route?
I do. I will go down that route all day. You start.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's no such thing as qualification if you're not searching for external validation. We're getting really deep here, but I think there's a lot of truth in that. Think about that for a second, right? If you don't care that somebody approves of you, there's no even sense of qualified. It doesn't matter. There is no sense of qualified because you're only qualifying yourself.
Okay, so is seeking additional qualifications a form of, could it be in theory, depending on the person, the experience, IMO, all of that, be an unhealthy search for external validation?
Of course it is. I mean, it could also be a procrastination method where you're like, well, I'm not a coach yet. I'm not qualified to be a coach. So why don't I go get some qualifications that then tell me I'm a coach so that I could believe it for myself and the rest of the world can believe it too. And now I'm a coach. What do we do in qualifying determining factors for your employer? I mean, ECTA, I can answer that. You have to convince them that you can do the job. So if they're going to come at you and say you need 5 years of Python, whatever experience as a coder, you have to show them that it doesn't matter that you need 5 years. You have to show them that you have the coding skills to do it. It's just, that's the problem with qualifications. And that's also another really interesting point, right? If you have, like, for job requirements, they have quote unquote qualifications, which are mostly BS because the people writing those qualifications don't actually know what the job entails.
Yeah. There's a whole nother problem.
Is that?
But I think, like, to your point, right? If they're saying you need 5 years of Python coding experience, they're quantifying that in some way. They're saying, assumedly, after 5 years, you will have this X amount of knowledge in this space. If you can prove that you have X amount of knowledge, regardless of years spent, then did you just prove your qualification outside of their specification?
Yeah, I mean, I think ECTA's point is, and I don't know if she meant this, but I think it's a really good point that externally qualifying yourself for something can be a bit of a challenge, right? Internally, you can feel like you're qualified because you're like, well, I know how to do, I'm the best Python coding scripter there is, but this organization won't even talk to me unless they know that I have 5 years experience. So we are unqualified should be qualified as someone else is telling you you're not qualified, not you aren't.
Yeah, but I mean, to go back into like the deep level, right? I mean, So if I was going into a conversation with an employer and applying for a job that I did not meet, so we'll go back to the 5 years thing. I didn't have 5 years in Python or whatever. I think I would first have to be validated and qualified in myself, right? In my soul, to be able to even engage in here's why I'm qualified outside of the standards that you set. Like one comes before the other. You have to have the strength, the inner strength to engage in that conversation.
Absolutely. And so we keep coming back to the same thing, that qualification comes internally, not externally. When you feel that you're qualified and you have that, like me, for instance, right? I've done web analytics my whole life. I was, one of the first web analytics analysts. I've won awards, blah, 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 boring.
Awards?
Oh my God, I'm a big award winner.
This sounds like qualifications, Jon.
Did you know that I was named one of the top 20? Look at me, I'm going close to the screen. I was named a top.
Kevin. I'll be Kevin.
I was named a top 25 data science influencer. So, I mean, that means that I'm qualified. So,
data science has influencers?
I don't know. Apparently they do. But I mean, I was making a point. I know, it's amazing. I was making a point that, like, when it comes to web analytics, I'm like, okay, you know what? There's enough that I've been able to do to affect change where I internally feel like I know that what I'm doing with web analytics. And you're not going to be able to sort of trip me up on this, even if you say that I don't have the right experience for it. It's not gonna work, right? So it is this internal confidence that says, yeah, I've been there, done that, right? I think it's even the same thing for coaching. I
agree. And when I first thought about doing this coaching thing, right, I went to Rob and was like, hey, I want to do this. I haven't really told anybody about it. I am completely unqualified. There's no reason I should want to do this. And he was like, okay, what have you done up until this point? So I kind of went through, I've had this job, I've done this, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, were you qualified for any of those things? And I was like, no. He's like, so why is this one different? Because, I mean, I ran a school for 10 years and I wasn't even qualified. I didn't finish my bachelor's in child development until after I left the school. And by the time I left the school, we had already won awards for best in our county and finished our accreditation process and blah, 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 blah. All the way through that, I was never formally qualified to even do what I had been doing. So I was winning awards in my industry without ever having the qualifications to be in that industry, to do the things that I was supposed to be qualified to do.
No, I mean, it makes sense, and it's exactly the point. But so at that point, you've gotten enough external validation, you've gotten enough internal validation and external validation that people recognize what you're doing. So if somebody's going to say, well, you're not qualified to run a school, you're just going to laugh in their face.
Yeah.
But that's only because you feel it. But it does come down to a really interesting question, which is the opposite, right? Where there's people who feel like they're qualified, but they're not. And I face that a lot in corporate politics in organizations where I've worked, where people are like, I can do that. It's easy. And they completely discount the amount of work that goes in to becoming an expert on something. And I'm not cool with that either. That's arrogance. When you do something like that, you're like, that's easy. I could do that. Like a lot. This is something I'm going to piss off LinkedIn next week. So everybody get ready for it. This is going to be the post that I'm going to write. Coders know how to code. That doesn't mean that coders know how to be CEOs or salespeople or marketing people. But a lot of them are so arrogant and they start their own companies and they think that because they know how to code, they can do marketing and all these other things. They're actually unqualified to do it because they're not good at it and they never took the time to do it.
So that's an interesting correlation, right? So qualification, in a sense, has to correlate in some way with your strengths and skill sets. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge part of qualifications. And here's another piece of it is I was always unqualified in the first, 10 years of my career to do what I was doing. But it was a strength and it was a skill set and I was passionate about it. Had you put me in the same, here, Chelsea, go be what are you? VP
of analytics, the New York City Tourism Board.
If they'd have been here, Chelsea, go be a VP. Freaking VP of analytics in the tourism something.
Yeah, okay,
and you're qualified to do it. It would have been a different outcome because the thing that I was doing, regardless of how formally qualified I was, aligned with my skill sets, my passions, and my interests. And I think that's a huge part of it.
I think it's a really great
lost.
It's a really great point, right? I think that like the coder, right? If they were genuinely interested and said, you know what, I'm not really that good at marketing, but I kind of really like it and I want to get better. But they never do that. A coder never does that. A coder is like, well, I know how to code and I can do everything else. And that kind of arrogance is something I call out all the time.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't appreciate or like. Yeah.
No. And in the education world, it's similar. And I loved dearly every teacher that I ever worked with in the schools that I directed. But there were times when they would come to me and make comments such as, well, if you would just let me do your job, then I could do it better. And I'd be like, please. Have my chair. Like, I will push you up. I mean, because it's different. Teaching in the classroom, regardless of how amazing you are at it, is not the same as directing a school, right? So if you decide to make those types of jumps, even if you're inside your own industry, there is a certain level of qualifications, though I hate to say that.
Here's what I love about this conversation and where we're missing a viewpoint. Is getting one of those teachers, or in my case, getting one of those coworkers of mine who thinks that they could do my job or some part of it better than I can without having ever actually done it. I would love to get them on the show and talk to them about what makes you think you're qualified, right?
Yeah.
Because it happens a lot where people are like, I know how to do that. But I'm like, I don't know, to me, like with my, like, I don't know, psychological thinking, I'm like, oh, you're just overcompensating for something. I don't know where that's coming from. Like,
is that like when you drive like the really giant trucks with the really giant wheels and then the tiny man gets out and you're like, aha.
Or,
no,
or like,
that's just
Texas.
Okay.
But no, I think that, you know, look, everything comes down to some sort of psychodynamic thing. But like, yeah, there's something there, right? There's something for those kind of people who do that kind of qualifying on the opposite of what you and I do, which we never really believe that we're really good. No matter what. Never, ever.
Totally true. And I think so we're always looking for those internal qualifiers, validations. We're always seeking the mountaintop because we never quite find it. But it would be interesting to be in the mind of the person who hits the mountaintop every single day and is like, I am the bomb. I think that's
but they're not, different. Though. But they're actually really not. That would be the interesting thing.
I have a theory that I want to bring up, but some of these comments are interesting. I wanted to go back. I was missing some of those. So like,
but our conversation is so great.
I know. Jessica was like, yeah, I think when you understand that a role requires due to your experience and feel confident, you can step up. Like, I know I can do this. Here's why. Here's my proof, etc. Regardless of the list of requirements, which we were talking about. I totally agree with that. Ryan says that, yeah, coding is a very specialized thing. Marketing and other specialties are different.
Yeah, but Ryan, come on. You also know that like all of these coders really do deep inside think that because they know how to code, they know how to do everything. I've seen it too often. As, you know.
Yeah. And coding, I mean, I'm not a coder, okay, but I would assume that coding is very mathematical in process, right? Like you push this button, it does that thing. Whereas marketing and other like running businesses and those types of things, they require a lot higher or a lot more like
comfortable with ambiguity.
Yes. Yeah. Right. You don't have a fixed outcome.
That's why coders typically aren't very good marketers, right? Because marketing requires an understanding of intangible elements where you're like, okay, I feel what's going on here and I understand and I empathize. Not to say coders can't do it, but they have to. You have to work hard on that skill set, right? Working on emotional intelligence is the same as working on. This is the thing, right? Everybody's like, "Oh, it's soft skills." Working on emotional intelligence is harder than working on coding in a lot of ways because everything 100%. Is so intangible, right? So if you want to be qualified in something like marketing or sales or something that requires an understanding of people on a deeper level, you have to study it and you have to live it. You can't just say you're qualified. And I think that's where the arrogance comes in.
I agree. And, you know, and that's where like my what could go wrong thing comes in, because at some point you have to be comfortable with things are going to go wrong. And here's what it's going to feel like and do like, and, you know, those types of things. And I think that comes more and more with the more ambiguous things that you're taking on, such as coaching. There's no like, this is the set outcome, or running a business, or those types of things become more and more ambiguous the more you leave your spreadsheets and your coding platforms or whatever. So you have to you have to allow yourself to feel pain.
Yeah, I think we're just making a point here. So like, I think there's a lot, and I think there's a lot more of these arrogant people who think they know how to do things than the other way around. We just happen to be a group of like very self-deprecating people who don't really ever feel like we're standing on, like we're always in quicksand, right? You just happen to gather us all together in one place, and we're like,
because we're all our favorite humans.
I mean, it is true. It's what bonds us. We just like, we have this like, yeah. There's also something really interesting, right? So the smartest people in the world are always the ones who feel the most unqualified. That's a really interesting topic of conversation too, right? The people who know the most, right? The academics, the professors, are always the one to say how little they actually know. It's really, they realize the extent of what knowledge is.
Yeah. I mean, like the more you learn, the less you realize that you know. Like the more I dig into philosophy and all those types of things, the more that I'm like, well, crap.
Yeah, like I don't understand anything.
That, but I apparently didn't. And there's so many other facets to it. And so I really think that's the more that you learn, the less that you know. And that really kicks you down a couple of notches. But I would agree with that. And like, all right, I'm going to catch up on a couple of these comments, and then I want to bring up a question /point/theory. So Ekta says there's a fine line between being internally confident in your skills and being overconfident. Sometimes it also comes down to how you communicate why you're a good fit. You could sound overconfident even when you're just trying to believe in yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the answer to that is, are you hyping yourself up because you're looking for external approval? Right.
Yeah, motivation.
Or are you just trying to show your skills and how you can do something, and you're just really confident in the fact that you know how to do it? So you're like really excited and passionate about bringing that confidence to the forefront. I think those are two different things.
I think internal motivators are a huge part of how it comes across or what you're able to communicate well. So like Kevin says, to be honest, within reason, the same goes with parenthood. I've talked to plenty of people who are like, of course I'm qualified for parenthood. It's just a kid. And then you have a kid. That's what those people who think they can do your job fine.
Kevin, I got to put that post out about parenting, because I literally put a post about that. I feel like the worst parent in the world on a regular basis.
I think the best parents do.
I'm just like, why? Every single day, why am I so bad at this?
I could, that's an area that I could like jump way into, and I won't. But I will say top level, and anybody who wants to debate this with me later, you're willing to do. I think the very best parents are the ones who are constantly saying, why am I not better at this? Like, why do I suck so hard at this? Because that leads them to then go, how could I do this better?
That's right.
What could I do better? And so I think the best parents are the ones who are going, wow, I suck at this.
No, I literally, it's so funny, Kevin. I literally have a LinkedIn post saying just that. I'm like, I think I'm terrible. Does anyone else feel that? Quiet and well-behaved. I did think that, Jennifer. I did think that. I thought that kids would be quiet and well-behaved, because you know what? That's the media's damn problem. The media is always showing these kids who are like drawing in the background while the adults are having some conversation. What is that? On every TV show.
It's not a real thing. But luckily, I have been in early education since I was like 14. So I never had a false understanding of what it felt like to hang out with children.
I did. I'm with you there, Kevin. I mean, with Jennifer. Yeah.
Sherry says, I need to go prove my lack of parenting qualifications and find food for my kids.
They should find their own food. That's how I feel about parenting.
That's what my parents, that's what my children do. I'm like, you don't worry.
Yeah, I say that to my kids all the time. Yeah.
Or that I could control the situation since I made it to adulthood. I got this. Oh boy. The art of knowing learning is unlimited. Smartest people tend to love the process of learning. I totally agree.
That's really smart, Ekta.
Oh, we have a ghost. I think it's the notion that coders are good at things that require logical thinking, but sometimes not everything in the world follows a set of logic.
See, that's actually brilliantly put, Mr. or Mrs. LinkedIn user, ghoster.
I'm going to find you. I'm going to find who you are.
Find you in your brilliant comment, because it's true.
Your brilliant comment.
When you see the world through logic, you tend to think that everything in the world works logically, which leads to a false understanding that you know how to do things like, I don't know, emotion and stuff like that. It's a great comment.
I agree. Okay, so I I can't keep up with these comments, but so I have a thing. All right. So I work a lot in ed tech, right? And many times it's educators who saw a need in education, and they might have been professors, teachers, principals, whatever. Okay. They see a need in education and they go to fill it with a business with some kind of tool. They create this really great tool. They see that it's effective. They're using it with learners or whatever. And then they hit this wall and they're like, well, crap. I don't know how to make processes to automate this. I don't know how to market this. I don't know who my ideal client is. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with that, because their skills are in what they saw the need, they did the need, and now they need to get the need out there, and they hit a wall. And that's many times where people are going, hey, Chelsea, because one of my skill sets is kind of combining education with business and speaking both languages, right? And then we can get them both out there. But it's so common because these beautiful, amazing educators who make beautiful and amazing things use all their skills in this space, and then they hit a wall and when they try to get their skills out.
Yeah, because no one has both of those skills. No one.
Right.
No one knows how to create and then send that out into in the world and sell it in the right way. I see the same thing in my field as well, Chelsea. I've talked to analytics owners, right, analytics vendors, and they create beautiful, elegant solutions that simplify things to make analytics solutions available to everybody. I'm like, how are you doing with your selling of it? Well, they're like, I don't know how to do that. At least they're willing to admit it, but like,
true. Yeah,
a lot of them are. They're like, I made it, but I'm struggling with the sales thing.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing. Like by the time educators are coming to me and they're like, hey, Chelsea, and that's kind of the unique role that I play is I can speak both education and business, and then I can end up somewhere in the middle. But the ability to come to a coach for whatever reason you need to hang out with a coach or an advisor or strategy person or whatever they are, is to say, I've reached my limit of being able to do this. I need someone to help me find that next step. And then, whatever that may look like. And me personally, I've worked with like a life coach. I think she was like an empowerment mindset coach. I still hang out with her because she's an amazing human. I've worked with the coach's coach. And I have another coach for a different thing that's happening in my world because I have very real limits.
Yeah.
Like all the time, darn it. And it's so valuable to bring that other person in for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that we can finally disagree. We're 50 minutes in.
Yes.
I don't necessarily feel the need to go to a coach if I feel like something is limiting me. My way of dealing with being limited is to find somebody who can do the thing that I need done better than me. So like that's something that I discovered really late, right? So I have all of these ambitious things that I want to do. I want to write. I'm like writing 2 books right now at the same time. I'm actually not though, because I was like, you know what? I don't have time for that. I have like my 2 jobs. You didn't even know I had a full-time job. I have the cat who makes weird noises. I have the 2 kids, the throw-up cat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't write a book. I'm going to go give it to somebody who has all the time in the world to do it. So my way of dealing with it is not to say I have limits for myself and I need to overcome it. I'm like, yeah, I have limits for myself, and somebody else who doesn't have those limits can go do it.
I would agree with that, but I think my version is a little bit different. Like I needed to get past some self-limiting beliefs. Okay. And for me, I needed a coach who could come in and kind of poke holes in my, theories that I had going on in my head. So mine was more like self-limiting beliefs in mindset, self-limiting beliefs in like things that my self-talk, those types of things, and needed someone to kind of come in and go, okay, can we reframe that in some way? But totally, I would, can I get a ghostwriter to write?
That's what I'm doing.
I want that.
I mean, I'm saying it to the whole group here. I don't care. If everybody knows that it's ghostwritten, I mean, at least it has my seal of approval.
I see 0 issues with that.
I have no problems. But yeah, I mean, I understand that. So like, some form of personal development guide, whether that's like a spiritual guide or a life coach or somebody who's going to help you reach the next level of who you are. For me, it's been a therapist. And I've been vocal about that. But yeah, I think that anybody going on a journey like this definitely needs that support in some way to get beyond the thing that they're trying to do.
Yeah, because at some point you only have your own neurological pathways, right? I mean, so at some point, it could be extremely valuable to have someone help you carve out a new one, especially if you've been in the same pathway for 30 years. It could be very challenging to get outside of that rut that you have found yourself in. And that's also just have become valuable for me, is going, I don't know that that's accurate. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I had a client today where that was literally what it was, right? She's just like, I keep hitting my head away against the wall and I can't figure out what the next step is. And I'm like, after an hour with me, I said to her, I've got you figured out. I know exactly where you're going. She's like, I don't believe you. I'm like, no, yeah, you'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Jen is 100% with you on the ghostwritten thing.
Yeah, and there's just wonderful talent out there who has like a lot of passion and a lot of time on their hands to help with this kind of stuff. And this is a sort of new realization for me. So one of the great things about saying that you're unqualified is once you admit it to yourself, you're like, great, there's people who are qualified to do something for me. Wow. Take the arrogance off the table that you're not so good at something, and you can find somebody who's better than you at it, and you can be really happy, and everybody wins.
It's a whole nother level of like freedom, I would say, like for myself.
Yeah, like you and I we're preaching to the choir here, but I would love to sit in a room with those arrogant folk who think they know how to do things and have the same conversation, and then what would happen? Like, I don't know. How would they respond to this? They would just deny it. I'm not like that. I'm not like that.
Well, I think you get a little bit of that narcissistic tendencies wrapped up inside of that. And they'd be like, do you have these tendencies? And they would be like, no.
No, I don't do that. I'm not like that. There's a lack of understanding and awareness that they are that way.
Correct. And does where they are with saying, I'm 100% qualified, I'm great all the time, I can do all these things, come from a lack of real awareness, or even the willingness to kind of dive into another level of awareness. And so,
it's all ties into lack of awareness. It's like it's like they're operating on a different plane or schedule than you.
And even uninterested in finding out more, because it's almost like for me, 10 months or so, I've been going on this whole dismantling, remantling journey for myself, right? And there was a point where I kind of stood on the cliff. Like, I know that if I jump off this cliff and start diving into more awareness and asking deeper questions, I'm going to have to deal with the questions and the answers that come on the other side. And there was a point where I stood there like, do I want to do that? Like, that sounds really hard, but I jumped anyway. But I would assume that there are people who stand there and go, I have no interest in doing that, or that my soul's fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in my case, since I've been on this journey for a really, really long time. And in my case, sometimes I have to say to myself, you know what? I'm not ready to go down that route right now. That's too much hurt. That's too much hurt for me. I'm going to delay that hurt, and I'm going to work with it when I feel like I can. But that comes from a lot of knowing about how much you can dig deep. I think the people that we're talking, I think the people we're talking about who do this arrogant, I'm always qualified no matter what, haven't even considered that they need to go on some sort of journey.
I agree. And so to that point, Jennifer, when she came on here with me, she posted a poll about something about being qualified. I don't know what it was, but it went crazy. All kinds of people responded. Maybe it was the poll. I can't remember. Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong. But she posted something about coming on the show and talking about qualified versus unqualified, and got like all kinds of comments, people from every side of the spectrum. And I bet it would be really interesting to find some of the people that had contradictory ideas about the value of being unqualified or the value of being qualified, and actually have this conversation. Because like you were saying, it just so happens that most of the people that I hang with have similar mindsets, because we mesh well that way, And so to bring a third party on there of someone who's like, no, you absolutely have to have X, Y, Z to do anything would be an interesting conversation.
It reminds me of one of the panels that I was once on, where there were three very, very unself-aware people on the panel. And then there was me and this trained psychologist as well. And the two of us were like bonded.
I'm glad you
trained psycho. I'm just going to end it there. Trained psychologist, right? So we're sitting here and we're like delving into these issues in a really deep way. And then we have all of these other panelists who are just saying things where we're just like, you aren't thinking very well, or that doesn't make sense, or there's a lack of awareness there. So you can find those people to have those conversations with, Chelsea, but you're going to get real frustrated real fast.
It's fine. I'll just bring you.
I'm an expert at handling those folk. I just
We'll
ask a
just
lot
get
of
you and me and
questions.
Jennifer. And
There's a lot
we'll
of this is finally devolving as we thought it would, but there's going to be a lot of that's really interesting. Do you want to explain more what you mean about that point? Do you do that a lot when people?
Oh my gosh, yes. I have a very specific person that I'm thinking of in my life who Jennifer probably knows exactly who I'm talking about, who much of our conversation says, that's interesting. Tell me more about how you landed there. Tell me more about your thinking behind that spot. Or can you explain that more to me? Just over and over. And they end up talking themselves into a corner or in a circle or something. And then it all breaks down because they
that's how you do it. That's how you
do
it. You don't actually confront. You ask them to explain. And then you ask questions that sort of pinpoint what's the loop there.
I mean, it's what I learned in child development about if I can talk to a 4-year-old, I can talk to a 40-year-old who thinks that have arrived.
If you know how to talk to a 4-year-old, I'm going to take some unqualified lessons from you because I don't know what. I'm like, okay.
I'm actually trained for that one. Of like all the things that we could talk about, I actually have qualifications for that.
I mean, to be fair, my 5-year-old is one of those like really easy kids, so I don't need help there. I'm willing to admit that, right? Sometimes you get a really easy kid and a really hard kid. I have one who's really easy. It's like it's like a plant. You just kind of water it a little bit. It's gonna be fine. It's like it's like a desert plant. And you're like, no matter what you do, it's like a succulent.
Like a cactus.
Yeah. It's gonna self-sufficient. It's gonna take care of it. It doesn't need much watering. I have one of those kids.
Yeah, it's fine. All right, so we have kind of covered like the metaphysical and the like
this has been
paper
deep.
copy, like the whole thing. So if you were to wrap it up, okay, tell me, what does it mean to be qualified? Like, how would you wrap all that up into a statement?
No, actually I was thinking about that. I'm glad you asked. I think qualified is separated into, oh my God, I'm going to get all strategy consultant on you here. But I think it's actually 4 quadrants, and the quadrants are external and internal on one side and qualified and unqualified on the other. Do you believe that you're qualified and somebody else doesn't? Or do you believe, or the other way, right? Or the other way around, do you believe that you're not qualified, but externally people believe that you do? Or like, do you meet somewhere in the middle where both sides believe that you're qualified and both sides believe you're unqualified? Do you see how that's really what this comes down to? Qualification is something that people bestow upon you, as to Ekta's point about qualifications for jobs, but it's also something that you bestow on yourself, whether you feel like you can do the thing or not. If I had to take anything away from the conversation, I think it's really that's the way I would summarize it.
I like it. So are you going to like build this, presentation, sell it as an ebook and become a millionaire?
I mean, I'm working on the millionaire part.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's not.
Well, I think
I think this is actually really the quadrant I think is a really great way of looking at it.
I agree, because there's way too many factors we're done. But just one last point. Like, if you were to take United States qualifications and then leave the country, do those qualifications translate? Or vice versa? Like, you were talking to me about somebody in a different country. If they take those qualifications that they have and come over here, do they translate? So qualifications are also heavily dependent on culture and location. Like, there's just no flat line of I am qualified.
Yeah. And just to end that, the best point, and this is be the final point, is Indian students who come here doing electrical engineering degrees, right? They don't think they're qualified because they're against thousands, millions of other electrical engineers in India who are all doing the same thing. They come here to the US and it's like, wait, what? No one knows how to do this. And they doubt themselves. They don't think that they're good.
Yeah.
So it's actually a really interesting point about cross-culture.
Yeah, that could be like a whole thing. Jen says this was the best episode yet, except for the one with her. So, I mean,
honestly, I thought this was a really satisfying conversation. So I'm going to feel like I
thought it was a super satisfying conversation. And the next round at some point in the future is to kind of get all of us who have been on this and do like a panel. So I want to gather questions from people who have watched some of our shows or been involved and kind of pull it up into a panel with those of us who have had this conversation and see where that goes, because that could be fun. And why not? It's not like I have a
Cool.
job.
No, you don't.
So
Your
it's fine.
kids tell you don't work, so it's all
Accurate. They told me to get a job today. It's fine. So thanks for hanging out. And while the unqualified people talk about what it means to be qualified, and for all the people who stayed around while whatever it is that was happening, I got a snack in my world. So you are the real heroes. Thanks for letting me get a snack. And we will see y'all next time on Why We Are Unqualified, or whatever the name of this show is. So we're done. Okay.